This is a special report from NBC News.
The American embassy in Tehran is in the hands of Muslim students tonight. Spurred on by an anti-American speech by the Ayatollah Khomeini, they stormed the embassy, fought the Marine Guards for 3 hours, overpowered them, and took dozens of American hostages. The students want the deposed Shah returned to Iran.
Welcome to Age of the Obsolete, a weekly podcast that examines the intersection of technology, democracy, and the future of work. I'm your host, John Revita. On the evening of April 24th, 1980, Iran. The plane was painted in black and green camouflage that made it invisible against the darkening sky. It flew no lights. Inside was a team of Delta Force operators. Their rendezvous was an empty spot in Iran's Dasht-e-Kavir desert. The plane had taken off from the island of Nasirah on the east coast of Oman. An hour behind were a group of helicopters, as well as 5 additional transports carrying the remainder of the assault force. 6 months earlier, Iranian students had stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and taken 52 American diplomatic negotiations, failed to secure release of the hostages. President Jimmy Carter decided to take action. The ensuing plan, codenamed Operation Eagle Claw, called for the Delta Force operators to be inserted just outside the capital city. The operators would wait until the following night, then assault the embassy compound under cover of darkness. With the embassy secured, they would take the hostages to a nearby soccer stadium. Helicopters would then ferry them to an airstrip outside the city. From there, U.S. transports would carry the hostages to freedom. It was an audacious plan with numerous contingencies, but the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as well as the head of Delta Force, the Army's newly created counterterrorism unit, were convinced that it would work. It failed miserably. Accurate planning and precise execution were key to the mission's success. Yet one of the things the plan failed to account for was a basic law of military operations: the unexpected. After a landing in what was supposed to be an isolated area, the Americans immediately encountered trouble. First, a nearby road, then a bus filled with 40 Iranian passengers. The bus was stopped and the passengers taken prisoner, but the trucks escaped, seriously jeopardizing the mission's secrecy. Of the helicopters that followed the transports into the desert, 2 never reached the landing area. Another encountered mechanical problems and could not continue. Because the plan was finely wrought, the failure of any one part could result in disaster. The planners gave the command to abort the mission. As one of the helicopters rose to leave, its rotors clipped the top of a C-130 and the copter crashed into the front of the transport. The 2 ships immediately burst into flames. By the time the Americans were back in the air, the rescue force had lost 8 men, 7 helicopters, and a C-130 and had failed to retrieve the hostages. The mission was an unmitigated disaster. Subsequent analyses described a failure of military readiness, observing that the Army lacked helicopter pilots who were sufficiently trained for low-level night flying, while the mission planners did not have enough experience with joint special operations to execute the rescue successfully. Readiness refers to the combination of training and preparedness that provides military personnel with the knowledge and expertise they need to successfully carry out their defined mission. Because today's conflicts, especially terrorist attacks, are increasingly asymmetrical, a state of readiness must address the high degree of uncertainty inherent in most wars. Although we can identify potential combatants and weaponry, we can never be certain as to when and where they will strike, or the exact manner in which the attack will come, which means that readiness is no longer confined to a single skill or discipline, but needs to be as broad as the spectrum of conflict it must continuously confront. Today we live in a world of continuous change, one in which the verities of the past have given way to uncertainty, a world in which time-honored concepts such as loyalty, seniority, and experience are fast becoming meaningless, replaced by the mathematics of cost and efficiency. The skills that once promised us success continue to lose assurance as new technologies, processes, and business models supplant those of the past. Not the distant past, but what for far too many of us seems like yesterday. Like military planners confronted by invisible foes and asymmetrical forces beyond our control, we can no longer assume that our current skills and knowledge will serve us well in the future. Instead, we need strategies that enable us to successfully adapt to change and uncertainty, and the only way to do that is to place ourselves in a constant state of readiness. The first step in establishing a state of readiness is to accept that in the future, nothing is certain. If something can happen, it most likely will. Outsourcing, automation, economic downturns, someone younger and less expensive, all are threats to our job security. The mistake we make is believing that we can't be replaced, or if we feel threatened, to double down by either working longer or harder, or by trying. Instead of doubling down, what we need to do is expand, not simply our skills and knowledge, but our connections and networks. We need to nurture those around us, creating interlocking circles of association so that when the time comes, we're able to reach out and leverage them. The harder we work, the more insular we become. We focus exclusively on the task at hand and wall ourselves off from the surrounding world of friends and family, from social and business connections. Yet, it is these connections that will prove invaluable to find ourselves in search of a new job. Being in a state of readiness also requires an acceptance that the skills demanded by our next job may not be the same skills required by our current position. Let's say you're an engineer, one with deep expertise in your industry. On the surface, this may seem like a surefire formula for job security. But what if there are hundreds, perhaps even thousands of other engineers with the same level of expertise? Or even more insidiously, a new set of algorithms that go far deeper into a problem than your mind could ever hope to. What if expertise no longer has any meaning because your company decides to outsource its operations? A state of readiness means preparing for any and all of these contingencies by moving outside your comfort zone and embracing continuous learning, not by diving deeper into your current job. A broad range of disciplines, many of which go beyond a specific industry or technology. If the future means more candidates for fewer jobs, then the way to stand out is to have a body of knowledge that is adaptable to more than one opportunity or challenge. Human resource managers seem to agree. When surveyed, instead of focusing on degrees and certifications, they invariably turn to less tangible attributes such as leadership, problem solving, team building, innovation and creativity, as well as the ability to work in a silo. All require exposure to a continuum of ideas that only come from a commitment to continuous learning. Finally, readiness means practice. When was the last time you spoke to a recruiter? When was the last time you went out on an interview? Do you understand the needs of today's job market? Do you know the questions you will be asked? How will you position yourself against other candidates, many of whom have the same education, experience, and skills as you? A job interview is like a sales call, one in which the product you need to be prepared, and the only way to be prepared is to go through the process repeatedly. Even if you're not currently in danger of losing your job, meet with recruiters. Ask them about your skills and experience and how you measure up against the competition. Have them critique your resume as well as your competition. Have them critique your resume as well as your communication skills and how you present yourself to others. Learn how to research a company and industry, and go out on interviews. Become comfortable within the process. Learn when to listen and when to ask questions. The most important question. The future is like the weather. Everyone talks about it, but when a storm hits, we all act surprised. It's time to eliminate the surprises, and the only way we can do that is by preparing for the storm. This is John Revito saying, thanks for tuning in. This is John Revito saying, thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions or want additional information on any of the topics covered in these podcasts, please go to our website at ageoftheobsolete.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.